Welcome back to another edition of the Saturday to Sunday Football Podcast. I am Paul Perdichizzi, and thank you for joining me. As always, day 3 of the NFL Combine is in the books. Quarterbacks, running backs, wide receiver prospects all took the field tonight in Indianapolis. So much to break down. Our first big trade of the offseason, Deebo Samuels is now another weapon for Jaden Daniels, a part of that Commanders offense. Here at Saturday Sunday, we will cover it all wire to wire, just like we've been doing every single day of the NFL Combine with our instant reaction day 3 pod. Go through the positions. We're going to start with the running backs, then we'll talk about the wide receivers and quarterbacks as well. Stock up on so many guys, some guys that maybe hurt their stock a little bit, or we want to see improvement by the time they get to their pro day. But this was a fun day for the fantasy and dynasty fans that were out there. This was a day that set the stage for, I think, what is going to be a more exciting dynasty rookie draft than maybe we gave it credit to. While it doesn't have the top tier wide receiver studs, I think we got some clarity today on this is a better wide receiver group than maybe we gave it credit for, especially in day 2. But the running backs lived up to the hype today. This was, without a shadow of a doubt, the fastest group of running backs, the most athletic group of running backs I think we have ever seen at any NFL combine, going back in terms of my whole life being a big NFL draft fan, following the draft, following the combine closely. I don't remember a running back group more exciting than this in terms of what we saw at the combine. A lot of the performers performed today. We saw in terms of the running backs and wide receivers. We saw a lot of people do things, which is more than we saw for some of the top guys at the other positions in the first 2 days. A lot of them, did not test or run at the combine. But today we saw a lot of the big names, and that was kind of exciting. We saw a lot of big names. We saw a lot of first-round guys, second-round guys who could be in the mix on that round 1, round 2 bubble. So it was a fun day here on day 3 of the combine. So let's jump right in because there's a lot of names to talk about. A lot of guys really shine. So we're going to start the running back group. And a couple things really stood out from the running back group. Let me start with some of the big names first here, and that's the guy who I thought was going to test out as the best in terms of combine athletic performances, and he lived up to the billing, and that's Bashal Tuden out of Virginia Tech. I talked about him on 3 episodes ago. He was on my list of 6 under-the-radar prospects that are going to start generating a lot of buzz and see their stock really climb. Well, Bashal Tuden now, I said he was going to blow up the combine. I was tweeting about it before it ever started today. At 206 pounds, he ran a 4.3240 with a 1.49 10-yard split, the best, I think, so far at the combine. He had a 40.5-inch vertical jump and a 10-10 on the broad jump. Unbelievable numbers that even in this deep class, I don't know how he doesn't start pushing his way into some top 10s. It's not like his film is bad either. He has good film. He was the focal point in the engine of that Virginia Tech offense. His big plays kept him in games or got him back in games. And now he's just checking boxes. And this was a performance that was unbelievable of what we saw out there. You're going to see him really start, I think, climbing draft boards as well. Quinshon Judkins, I got to be honest with you. I thought he was more quicker than fast, play strength, contact balance. I did not know he had this type of athleticism. At 221 pounds, he ran a 4.4840, 1.51 10-yard split, 38.5 on the vert, 11 on the broad jump. So Quinshon Judkins squarely puts himself back in the top 50 mix, I think, with this level of performance. You can make the case that now after, I think, Ashton Genty and Omarion Hampton are locked in at 1-2. The bigger question might be, does Hampton potentially leapfrog Genty? I think that's even a conversation now. But I think after that, Judkins has put himself in the mix to be RB3. You have Caleb Johnson in that mix, who ran a 4.57. I think for how fast all the other guys were running, it was a little disappointing for him. But relative to some of the bigger guys like Ollie Gordon and Damian Martinez, it was pretty much in line with them. Martinez did get a 4.51, which was nice to see on his second run. But I think Judkins, Travion Henderson, who did pretty much what we expected, great day for him as well. I think Judkins is now in that mix to be RB3 with Travion Henderson, with Caleb Johnson. I'm a huge Dylan Sampson fan. He didn't run today. Charles Davis on the broadcast said it had something to do with an injury. He did do the drills. I thought he looked tremendous in the drills. I think when he does get around to running his 40, it's going to be in the mid 4.4s. It's like a 4.45 or a 4.46. And I still think Sampson deserves to be right there in the mix as well in the top 5. But Judkins had a really impressive day. Those were some amazing jumps to kind of show off more than I think what people thought about him in terms of his athleticism and speed. We saw Omarion Hampton. I just mentioned him at 221 pounds. He ran a 4.46 40, 1.5 10-yard split. He had a 38-inch vert and a 10-10 broad. A lot of buzz during the combine coverage. Is it possible now that there could be some legit conversations about who's RB1 and who's RB2 in this class between Genty, between Omarion Hampton? I think there's a real chance Hampton now finds his way into round 1 as the second running back in this class. I still think Genty will go before him, but the fact that it's even a conversation, Mel Kiper in his most recent mock had Omarion Hampton going 12th to the Cowboys ahead of Ashton Genty. So I think if Kiper's put it in that mock, there's at least some people out there that are thinking about it. And I think more people might even be thinking about it after this performance by Omarion Hampton. Other guys, I'm just going to kind of now run through the rest somewhat alphabetical. You had Taj Brooks. I thought he was very much a short area, burst, quick type guy, play strength, physicality, contact balance. I wasn't expecting the athletic numbers that we got from him out of today. He's 214 pounds. He plays even bigger than that. He ran a 4.52 40, which for his style is very good. He had a 1.56 10-yard split, a 35-inch vert, a 10 broad. He had a 4.06 20-yard shuffle, a 6.90 for recone. Those are some really good numbers in the change of direction drills, in the explosion drills. So Taj Brooks, I came away really impressed with his day today. I still think he's on the day 3 radar, round 4, round 5. But he showed more versatility to his game today with a little bit more. We know already what he did really well in college, but I thought today he showed a little bit more versatility, that there might be a little bit more than that gap scheme, power inside runner. So I thought it was a really good day for Taj Brooks. Donovan Edwards, who had a really poor final, basically 2 years in college, showed everyone that big-time athleticism that made him a big-time recruit, that once upon a time made him a guy that we thought could be a round 2 type running back. 4.44 in the 40, 38.5-inch vert. Listen, I still think he's very much ticketed to be like the 18th to 20th running back taken. But in this class, that could put him in the round 4, round 5 mix, especially with his good receiving skills that I don't even think Michigan took fully advantage of. DJ Giddens, if you've been listening all year, he's been one of my guys. He, very similar to Taj Brooks and Quinshon Judkins, blew me away with his combine testing numbers. I thought he was an average to above average athlete. But when you see this, 212 pounds, he ran a 4.3 40, 1.53 10-yard split, 39.5-inch vert, 10-10 broad. Those are elite level athletic testing. He already had really good film, the vision, the patience. This was a big time performance from DJ Giddens, cementing himself in that early round 4 range. There's so many guys that probably weren't going round 3 on day 2, but there's going to be so many of them that end up going in the early portion of day 3 in round 4. RJ Harvey, a guy who I have in my top 10 running backs at 205 pounds. He ran a blazing 40, a 4.40, 38-inch vert, 10.7 on the broad. A guy who really surprised me was Montreal Johnson out of Florida. I was not expecting a 4.41 40 at 212 pounds, 35.5 on the vert, 10.3 on the broad. Really good numbers for Montreal Johnson. In a deep class, you need something like this to kind of generate a little buzz to make sure you get taken in that round 5, round 6 area, because there's going to be so many running backs vying for those spots during the draft season here because of how great this class is. Damian Martinez, I mentioned him before. 4.51 on the 40, I think is really good at his he dropped some weight, 217 pounds. I think he probably plays more close to the 225, but for him to do that, the film is really good. I think Damian Martinez is in that running back 10 to running back 12 range in this draft class. Cam Scatterbo didn't do anything except the jumps, but I got to be honest with you, the jumps were really impressive. 39.5 on the vert is a really, really good number for Cam Scatterbo, and a 10.3 on the broad. So he tested out really good in those two jumps. Damian Martinez, I mentioned the 4.51 He also had a 35-inch vert and a 10.5 broad. So both of those guys showing some more athleticism than a guy like Ollie Gordon. So again, I talked about it, the combine preview, using the combine as kind of a way to sort tiers and break tiers. I had in my rankings Scatterbo, Damian Martinez, Ollie Gordon in that order. I don't think I'm going to change the order from what I saw here, but I do think it helps solidify that Scatterbo, we only saw the jumps, but they were pretty impressive. Martinez tested out as a little bit better of an athlete than Ollie Gordon. And when you're trying to break ties and sort tiers, that's where the combine can come really helpful as well. Combine's also very helpful when guys really surprise, aka Montreal Johnson, who I talked about a few minutes ago. I'm interested in watching more film on him, see if I missed the wrong games, because I didn't see that 4.41 speed, but that was really impressive nonetheless, as a guy who maybe has a little bit more juice to him than we thought. Talked about Dylan Sampson before, still in my top 5, top 6 running backs in this class. Very smooth in the on-field drills. I think he's going to test out pretty well when he runs his 40 as well. Raheem Rocket Sanders lived up to the name. Another guy at 217 pounds. He ran a 4.46 40. That's a really impressive for him, 36.5 on the vert. So that was really impressive for the bigger back there, Raheem Sanders. He's in that round 4, round 5 mix. Brashard Smith, one of my guys who was in my episode when I talked about 6 under the radar guys that were going to see their stock climb. Well, he ran a 4.39 40. Former wide receiver, one of the best pass catching running backs in this class, versatile offensive weapon. I thought Brashard Smith was a big winner today. Marcus Yarns had a Delaware 4.46 40, 37.5 on the vert, 10.2 on the broad. That is how you get noticed and recognized in a deep running back class. If you want to be a late round pick here, there's going to be so many running backs vying for round 6, round 7 picks. Yarns, solid Senior Bowl, really, really good combine performance. That puts him on the radar, I think, to now make sure he's drafted in the 2025 NFL draft. A couple guys that didn't run that fast, and I'm not surprised by it, but Jordan James and Woody Marks, both of those guys are quicker than fast. James ran a 4.55, Marks ran a 4.54. Both of those guys, very much like what Bucky Irving was last year. Good vision, good patience, good receiving skills, especially for Woody Marks, one of the best pass catching backs in the class. Those guys win with their vision, with their patience, with their run instincts. They got short area quickness, short area bursts, movement skills. Both of those guys, I'm still fans of their game. This wasn't surprising. I didn't expect those guys to really run that much faster, maybe 4.5 on the flat or 4.52. So 4.54 and 4.55 are not that surprising for them. I did say I thought Caleb Johnson was going to be more like a 4.48 to 4.49 type guy. So I was a little surprised by the 4.57, especially when we were seeing so many fast 40 times. Still a fan of Caleb Johnson's game, but I do think in what's a fantastic running back class, running that time opens the door up for guys like Quinshon Junkins and others to maybe get picked ahead of him, because it's such a strong group there in that tier 2, tier 3 mix where so many running backs are going to go in early portion of round 2, mid round 2, late round 2, that I think the door is at least open now. I think Genty and Hampton have kind of solidified themselves as the 1-2. And now I think that next group kind of is opened up a little bit there with Henderson, with Judkins, with Caleb Johnson, with Dylan Sampson, especially after Caleb ran the 4.57 today. One guy I was a little disappointed in, had good jumps, but Devin Neal with only a 4.62 40. He seems like he plays way faster than that at his size. He still had a good RAS overall athletic score because the jumps were good, but I was expecting more of like a 4.47, 4.48. So that was probably, in terms of, I would have made predictions before these running backs ran, I think Devin Neal would have probably been the one that I was most off on. Because like I said, I would have thought he was in that 4.48, 4.49 range, and he ran a 4.62. I don't think I would have been as far off on any other player as I would have been on Devin Neal. If we take this now to the quarterbacks and the wide receivers, let's start with the quarterbacks, because very few of them decided to do any of the running. The only guys that we got a 40 time on were Brady Cook, Tyler Shook, and Those are the only two that I thought that ran. We didn't get Jalen Milroe, which was a little disappointing. I don't know why, if you could run as fast as he can, why you just wouldn't run, blow up that part of your game. But he didn't run. But I got to be honest with you, in the drills of the quarterbacks that are vying to be QB3, QB4, QB5, I actually thought Milroe threw the ball the best. Now, maybe there's some bias there because he's my QB3 and I like them. But I thought I saw a lot of positive reinforcement on Jackson Dart. I watched every throw of Jackson Dart. Some of them were good throws. He had some really bad misses too, that you want to be able to complete the passes. I know he's working with receivers that he hasn't worked with before, but he was overthrowing guys a lot. And that's an area where, you would have liked to see him clean that up a little bit. I actually thought Milroe threw the ball better than Jackson Dart. I still think Milroe's still my QB3. I'm not coming off of that. I readily accept that Jackson Dart, from the buzz out there, is going to get taken ahead of him. But I just think if you're a team in that late round 1, early round 2 range, and you're looking for a quarterback, you could take Jackson Dart. But if he hits, what is he hitting? To me, you're talking about getting the 18th to 22nd best quarterback in the league. If he hits, not a game breaker, not a guy who I think could be a carrying offense type of player or a transcendent player. On the flip side, if Milroe was to be able to develop in terms of his passing acumen, he, clean up the footwork, the accuracy, and the ball placement issues, combined with his ability to push the ball vertically down the field because he does have a big arm, and then the elite athleticism, speed, and mobility. To me, I would rather take my shot on Milroe late round 1 or early round 2. And if he pans out, you could get a guy who could be a potential difference maker. I don't see a path for Jackson Dart to be a difference maker. Jackson Dart doesn't have tools that I think, even you might say athletically and physical traits wise, him and Shadu are close. Yeah, okay. But Shadu Sanders elevated a program. Shadu Sanders has top level anticipation, touch, decision-making. Jackson Dart does not have that. So Jackson Dart might have a little bit of a stronger arm, but I just don't see it. A lot of people I respect see it. I'm much more in line that he's a second-round talent. Maybe he gets pushed into round 1. I would take Milroe before I would take Jackson Dart. I think people were over-hyping up Jackson Dart's performance today. I thought it was very mediocre and average at best. And I'm not saying Milroe blew it away. I thought he looked solid, better than I expected, to be honest with you, in the passing drills. I wish he would have just ran the 40 as well. I thought Tyler Shook showed better athleticism, 4.64 40, 32-inch vert, 9.9 on the broad. So I thought that helped him out a little bit. In terms of a late-round quarterback, I thought Brady Cook helped himself out a little bit today, showing really good athleticism, 4.59 40, 37 on the vert, 10.8 on the broad. Interesting developmental, late day 3 type quarterback prospect there in Brady Cook. A lot of the buzz in terms of the quarterbacks that were down there was that there seems to be a clear pecking order that Ward is who most teams have as their first quarterback on the board, and Shadu Sanders as number 2. So a lot of people seem to have, it seems to be right now, the general consensus that Cameron Ward has separated himself from Shadu Sanders. I have them side by side, basically. I've had Shadu Sanders ahead of him, but I totally understand if you're swinging for upside. If the team like the Giants is looking to move up to number 1, I think you should only be doing that move if you clearly have Ward ahead of Sanders. I think there's a much greater chance you could stay at 3 and take Sanders. I think the ceiling for Sanders is less than it is for Ward. So I think if a team is aggressive moving up, it should be for Cameron Ward based on the upside traits that he possesses, more off structure, playmaking ability as well, bigger arm, more athleticism in terms of taking off and running if need be. But the buzz down there does sound like there is a little bit of a gap between Ward to Sanders, which makes it a little bit intriguing there at the top of the draft. If Cleveland's interested in a quarterback, then teams that want Cameron Ward are going to have to leapfrog Cleveland, get to that first pick, get to the Titans pick. And I think that's where things become very interesting for teams like the Giants, the Raiders, and the Jets. They got to get to that position. So we'll see how that kind of plays itself out. The rest of the other top quarterbacks did not partake. I didn't think anybody else stood out from the Dylan Gabriels, the Quinn Ewers, the Kyle McCords, the Will Howards, those guys. Got to be honest with you, very inconsistent, very up and down. None of them even in shorts and a T-shirt thrown at the combine. I thought really jumped off the page and stood out. For me, I don't see my path changing my top 5 quarterbacks. it's going to be Warden Sanders in some order at 1 and 2. It's going to be Jalen Miller at 3. It's going to be Dart at 4. It's going to be Tyler Shook at 5. And then the rest of the guys like Will Howard, Kyle McCord start filling in after that, and Quinn Ewers. Let's take this to the wide receiver portion of things. I'm going to start with Tej Johnson because, again, you got to look at the entire picture of Combine Day. Only ran a 4.5140, which is not what anybody expected. I think most people, I talked about the running back, Devin Neal was the one that probably stunned me the most if I was projecting. If I was going to put a number on Tej Johnson before he ran the 40, I would have probably put it at somewhere between like 4.39 and 4.42. That's kind of where I thought Tej Johnson was going to run. So when he ran a 4.5140, that was one of the more surprising wide receiver times. But he did have a 33-inch vert. He had a 10-1 broad jump, and then his change of direction stuff was fantastic. So I think Tez, by the time he comes to pro day, I think you'll see him run like a 4.45 or 4.46. He has great change of direction testing numbers, good jumps. I think he's still squarely in that day 2 mix, and I think he'll shave some time off of that on his pro day. But again, it could just be his play speed seems way faster than that. His play speed seems way faster than the time speed that we saw from some guys today. And that does sometimes come down to learning how to run the 40. The get off from the initial stance there is really a trained habit that maybe he just hasn't mastered that yet. But when you're talking about on the football field, I think the speed is way faster than that. So while I think a lot of wide receivers helped themselves today, I don't think Tez was this massive loser in terms of dropping a lot. I think the change of direction stuff, the jumps, showed what type of athlete he is, and the game film speaks for itself, even if the overall 40 time hurts maybe his overall stock a little bit. I don't think it really moves the needle that much, especially if he can improve upon it and get into the mid 4.4s at his pro day. Jack Besh did not run the 40, but I did want to talk about him. I thought the drill work was really smooth. Watching him run the gauntlet drill, you just see straight line, the focus, the ball skills, the natural hands, just attacks the football. So I thought it was a good on-field work for him. But then in terms of the guys who tested out athletically, I mean, the list is a mile long here of prospects I could talk about. I'm going to talk about a couple of the ones that really stood out to start. Jalen Noel, big winner at the Senior Bowl. He just continued there today. 4.3940, 41.5-inch vert, 11.2 on the broad, 4.17 on the shuttle, 6.82 on the free cone. An elite level athlete with really good film, inside-outside versatility, top performer at the wide receiver position at the Senior Bowl. This is checking boxes. This is dominating the pre-draft process. And now this is squarely putting him in the mix. And I tweeted this out, and I'm standing to it. If you count Travis Hunter as a cornerback, I think Jalen Noel is a top 5 a wide receiver in this class. For me, it comes down to you got Tat McMillan, you got Luther Burden, you got Emeka Egbuka, you got Matthew Golden, who flew today with a 4.2940 in short speed that I don't think anybody thought he had. But then after that, Jalen Noel would be the next guy. So if you count Hunter, he's number 6 for me. If you don't count Hunter, Noel is number 5 for me. And this just solidified it. He was already right there leading into it in a tier where I thought could kind of separate a little bit from some numbers. Well, he soared in that from what we saw today. His teammate, I thought, was a massive winner as well. Jaden Higgins. I had some concerns about the athleticism, the speed, and the burst. Well, he put them to rest today. He looked really good in the drills, and then he ran a 4.4740, 39-inch vert. We knew we had the ability to go up and get it. 10.8 broad, 214 pounds. This is checking boxes and going above the checking of the boxes. Now you're talking about an outside wide receiver that has the speed to get vertical with top flight ball skills, with leaping ability. This is a guy that now is seeing his stock climb. Maybe he's wide receiver 5 or 6 or 7, but now that's in the conversation here for Jaden Higgins. I do like Noel a little bit more on film, so I'm going to stick with that. But both of those guys, I can understand anybody having them ranked in a different order. But for me, it's Noel 1, it's Higgins 2. If we're talking about the Iowa State wide receivers, Jalen Lane at a unbelievable. I talked about him in the summer S2S podcast when we were previewing the wide receiver position. I was a fan of his game. He had a pretty much down senior year, lackluster year, but 4.340, 40 on the vert, 11 on the broad, 4.12 shuttle, 6.75 recone. Elite level athlete. He's got some good film out there as well. I think he helped himself now to be a quality earlier day prospect, round 4, round 5 with this type of athletic testing. But there were so many guys. I mentioned Matthew Golden, 4.2940. I think most people thought he was going to be like a 4.45 guy. So he ran a 4.2940. I think the conversation is now open. I don't think Ted McMillan is locked in to be wide receiver 1 in this class. He's not doing anything. That's a little bit of a red flag. We saw Marvin Harrison last year, who I still think is going to be a very good player, but we saw Marvin Harrison do nothing. And we saw him have some separation concerns at the next level, even though I think he's still going to be good. Does a team see Ted McMillan dodging everything? Doesn't have the pedigree of a Marvin Harrison like the pedigree Harrison had. And does a team look at Egbuka, Luther Burden, or I think Matthew Golden? I think Golden is now the guy who's put himself in the mix to maybe jump to potentially the first wide receiver. I don't think it's out of the question. So I think it was a big day for him to significantly run faster than what the expectations were. Ty Felton, who was on my list before the day started as a wide receiver who would generate a lot of buzz from today and be on everybody's winner list. Well, 4.3740, 39.5 on the vert, 10.10 on the broad, big time speed. Felton's going to be climbing boards. I wouldn't be stunned if he goes late round 3, but if not, early portion of day 3 for that big time speed that he possesses. Luther Burden run a 4.41. I thought that was really solid. I thought it could have been like a 4.46 or 4.47 at his build. So 4.41 was really solid. Another guy I talked a lot about in the summer preview shows, Sam Brown, formerly of Houston, transferred to Miami. Was really excited to see him play this year. He just didn't really materialize at Miami, but they had a lot of playmakers. He shows the big-time athleticism that really intrigued me last summer. 4.44 in the 40, 41.5 on the vert, checking boxes, put himself on the map to be drafted for sure. Alec Iomanner, 4.44, 40, 38.5 on the vert, 10.7 on the broad. He's put himself in that mix there, testing out as a bigger guy, but a really, really good athlete. So I think that was impressive. Jimmy Horn out of Colorado, 4.4640, 38 on the vert, 10.8 on the broad, looked really smooth in the drills. Everything looked really natural to him. I thought this was a good day for Jimmy Horn. Torrey Horton, really smooth wide receiver. It showed even better speed than I thought. 4.41 on the 40, 37.5 on the vert. Isaiah Nair, 6'4", 218. Let me repeat that. 6'4", 218. He went out and ran a 4.4 on the 40, 38-inch vert, 11.1 on the broad. Kyle Williams, one of my other guys who I talked about in the 6 prospects flying under the radar who were going to start generating a lot of buzz. He ran a 4.4, 40, 36.5 on the vert. I think he's a top 100 player. And then the guy who's going to be sending a lot of people back to the film who maybe haven't watched him yet and are going to start to watch him after this is Dante Thornton Jr. out of Tennessee. 6'4", 205. He ran a 4.3040, 33 vert, 10.6 broad, has good film winning at the catch point with ball skills and body control and leaping ability. I thought this was a big-time performance from Thornton to really elevate his draft stock, putting him in that round 3, early round 4 mix, very similar with Ty Felton. I can keep on going. Just look at the running back position. I could have talked about so many guys. I could have talked about so many other wide receivers as well. But those were the guys that I really thought shined the most. Guys, if you've been enjoying this coverage, please get over to the website, S2S Football, fastest and easiest way to get there. For $9.99, you get access to all of our premium notebooks. You get the scouting notebook, 100 detailed player profiles on offensive skill players. You got strengths, you got functional areas, you got developmental areas, NFL role, how they win, NFL draft projection, and fantasy spin. Broken up in the quarterbacks, wide receivers, tight ends. You have all the guys that didn't declare, all their reports there as well. You get the rankings notebook, has my draft rankings updating constantly. Going to do major updates over the next couple of days. Okay, re-ranking things from the combine. Start setting up my tiers, which are going to be in there as well. Setting up the tier buster shows here on the podcast feed. Dynasty rookie rankings from last year still being updated. We'll have new Dynasty rookie rankings the weekend of the draft. Devy rankings are there, positional dynasty rankings as well. And then in April, the draft projections notebook releases tabs for every position, offense and defense, a big board projecting the 32 prospects to go round 1, another big board projecting the 100 prospects to go in the first 3 rounds, and then the last board projecting every pick is usually around 256. We have had a tremendous track record of projecting that notebook. While the thoughts in terms of how they win are mine, the developmental areas, you also get the combine measurements there, the combine testing. The ordering of the prospects is from everything. I literally have the guys who I trust the most. I bring it all together to try to set up the best overall consensus big board, not everybody's who just puts a big board out. These are the things I'm hearing from the people who I think have the most intel, bringing it together and trying to create the perfect, basically, TV guide for that weekend to kind of set the stage for how you should expect it to go based on everything that is out there from the best of the best in the industry. You get it all for $9.99. It's the best way to support the show. It helps me continue to do what I do here. Subscriptions, server fees, website fees. It's the lifeblood of what keeps us going here. Every single purchase of a notebook goes right back into the company to help us to continue to do what we're doing here. If you've been enjoying this, one more day to come. I know the O-line is not a fantasy or dynasty fun group, but if you're a big fan of the NFL draft, not a lot of instant reaction pods that are going to be out there talking about offensive linemen. I'll be live tweeting my thoughts throughout the 4th day of the combine. There'll be a recap pod with my instant reaction. There'll probably be a shorter one, a little mini instant reaction pod to day 4, talking about the offensive line prospects. And then we will go into the next phase. There'll be maybe another stock report, kind of bringing everything together if there's anything I missed from the combine before we start turning our attention to our tier buster shows, then bringing on guests from the industry as we get a little bit closer to April, and then the obvious NFL 2025 NFL draft. So on behalf of our sound tech engineer, David Nakano, and myself, thank you for joining us, and we look forward next time taking you from Saturday to Sunday.